Hello. Welcome to this video. This is the updated and improved assignment for Establish Effective Workplace Relationships. The code for that is BSBWOR401A. So this is a pretty important unit. It's also a good preparatory unit for anyone doing the diploma or the Cert 4 version of team effectiveness that comes up later in the workshop program. Anyway, let's get straight into this. As usual, into Part A and Part B to get through the assignment. I'll go through both in a second. This one has an extra option within it, and that's for people who don't have a workplace at all or haven't been able to work in recent times and they want to use some other way to get through this assignment. If that's the case, that's option 2. It's called the toolbox option. I'll need to talk to you personally and provide you with that toolbox in order to get you through that. But in most cases, in fact, everyone who's currently working, I expect you to do the assignment. It's definitely the best way to get through the unit. You can apply some of these new skills straight away at work, hopefully make a difference to you. Okay, let's get into this. So Part A I'm talking about on page 5. Question 1, only 2 questions here, but there's a little bit of work involved. This question comes up quite a lot, the first question. It's about the legislation and business ethic requirements that are behind all business. And this time it's in particular relation to workplace relationships. So it talks about privacy, discrimination, work health and safety, codes of practice, service principles, those sort of things. So anyone who works for a government department, most things are covered by codes of conduct, state service principles, all those sort of stuff. And there are also procedures within government departments and private business about work health and safety, privacy and discrimination. I mean, they're all pretty important. This question comes up so many times now, you can just copy and paste what you've done in the past if you've already covered it. I just need to know that you know the key things from the legislation. Don't need you to research it to the nth degree, just to know the things that are important about relationships. So privacy is pretty important, keeping things confidential. Obviously work health and safety is always important, and it can do with stress or fatigue, as well as the other injuries that we can get that are more of a physical nature. And this idea of equity and diversity, that's fairly strongly emphasised through this unit. So we should have a fair understanding of those things too. Anyway, I'll leave it to you to have a quick look at those things. I just need a little bit about each area, that's all. Question 2. Now, by referring to the workshop resources, so the workbook for this unit, fairly extensive, covers quite a lot. The textbook also a good chapter on this sort of stuff. Any other resources you can find, like mind tools or anything that's got reputable sort of rigour behind it, then sure, you can use those as well if you want to. So we want to look at the background, the models, the concepts, even some of the theories, if you want to bring those into it, that support this idea of managing workplace relationships and getting planned outcomes from that. In other words, getting team working together, someone on performance development plan, getting them to achieve what their goals, all those sort of things. It can be anything really, what we call a planned outcome. The areas to be looked at are trust and confidence, consistent behaviour in work relationships, understanding the cultural and social environment, identifying and assessing interpersonal styles, or it could be personality tests, things like that, establishing, building and maintaining networks, pretty important part of this unit, identifying, resolving problems, resolving conflict, managing poor work performance, and monitoring, analysing and introducing ways to improve work relationships. An extensive list there, but just a generic overview would be quite fine, even from the things that are in the workshop notes about building trust and confidence, about personality traits and work roles, about assertiveness and managing conflict. So any of those general things will be fine. Once again, I don't need a lot of information. In the assignment, you're going to be asked to use some of these tools and techniques. So that's where I'll see it demonstrated, but I just need to know that you've really researched this enough to have an idea of the theories, concepts and models that fit behind it all. Okay, let's turn our attention to part B then. This starts on page 6. And as usual, it says here, make sure you've done all of the training and revision requirements before you attempt the assignment, these assessment tasks. So in some cases that means going through the learning chapters, reviewing the workshop notes and the activities that might have been in there. I need to make sure that you've done those things before you get stuck into the assignment. So in some ways part A helps prove that, but if you tick on the assignment, you know, where I've done all these things, I'm ready to be assessed, that means that you've done them. So please make sure you have. Let's go on to the assessment task then. Task 1, about trust and confidence. Briefly describe what behaviours you demonstrate that you believe contribute to achieving the trust and confidence of your team members, colleagues or manager. So what things do you do? It might be because you're open, honest. You might even demonstrate some of the items out of the FOCM model. You know, FOCM is a model that you'll find in the notes. No doubt we'll talk about it at the workshop, but it can be the other model as well. The really good one that's in the notes is that character, critique, and consistency, which that's a really good one. So let's just find something that shows that you have those skills, I guess. Provide at least 3 examples of responses you've had from team members, colleagues or manager that demonstrate you've succeeded in gaining their trust and confidence. So just 3 small examples. It might be that you've been asked to do someone else's job when they're on leave. It might be that colleagues have come to you for advice or told you confidential information because it shows they have your trust or you have their trust. So just 3 things like that. And C, describe how you would or do encourage others to appreciate cultural and social diversity. Okay, it might be your involvement in, say, NAIDOC week. It might be something to do with people with disabilities. It might be helping people with low literacy skills. It might be people from low socioeconomic backgrounds who may not have the education that some of us have had the benefit from, to help them interpret forms and information and things like that. So that's task 1 out of the way. Task 2. So this really is a pivotal part of the whole assignment. It's very practically based. Firstly, you're asked to identify 2 relationships of people who are important for you to get your job done. So it could be someone you report to, it could be someone who's a colleague, it could be someone who reports to you. I don't really mind too much, but they've got to be 2 people that you deal with often, or at least regularly. You're asked to rate the effectiveness of those, and there's a little sheet here, which you'll probably recognise from within your own assignment. And it's not a bad little checklist to rate a relationship against. So you're just asked to put it between 1 and 7, how you rate the relationship for openness, for verbal communication, for dealing with disagreements and grievances, for timing and frequency of communication, trust, willingness to listen, and written communication. So it's a pretty fair way to look at the depth of the relationship you might have with those people, and hopefully it will identify where you might be able to improve on that relationship, which is what's asked for in C in task 2. And then D, be self-critical about your own contribution to relationships. So we're asking you to sort of come up with a plan a bit later on. So please don't just put all the blame onto somebody else or say it's because of their attitude or their personality that these things occur. We're asking you to be a bit self-critical because of the information you know now from this workshop and from the resources that you've had a look at. So we need to draw up an action plan against any of these criteria that are in the rating sheet. And put that into place over the course of the assignment period, so over 4 or 6 weeks or so. And then we're going to look for a bit of a report about how things turned out with your strategy. So maybe you've decided to be more assertive, you've got to practice those skills, and you can sort of tell me how that has gone. You might decide that you're going to have much more regular contact, formal regular contact with someone, just to make sure there's no misunderstandings. That's the sort of thing we're looking for there. So, task 2 within task 2 is analyse and report on the interpersonal problem or conflict situation you may have observed in your workplace. So this is reflecting on some issue that caused a bit of conflict. Firstly, what do you believe is the real cause of the problem? Secondly, draw up a conflict map. We discussed that in the workshop, but it's basically just a diagram with the issue and then all of the people around it, what their needs and wants are, what are their concerns, that sort of stuff, what are their fears. It just helps resolve it when you can identify all the players and see what they want out of it. So draw up the conflict map and list any latent issues, so things that have happened in the past that might be carrying over, such as someone being promoted over somebody else, such as some big conflict that's occurred in the past over anything. So just when it says latent, it just means things from the past that may still contribute to how people feel about each other. Then C, how do you believe the people involved, including yourself if applicable, could have handled the situation more effectively? Make reference to the collaborative, problem-solving, interpersonal and negotiational skills and the effects of personality traits that may contribute to the problem and will help with your analysis. So you might be able to say someone's of a particular personality leaning, and because of that, their natural desire is maybe it's to be competitive. And if that's the case, then that's going to lead to conflict. That might explain some of the reasons. But a bit more depth than that from you, but that's what we're looking for there. So hopefully that'll be fairly straightforward. I'm moving over now to task 3, which starts on page 10. Discuss the following processes within your organisation and recommend any improvements that could be made, okay? So even though there's little dot points, I actually need a fair bit of analysis here. I mean, your answer still can be succinct, but I need you just to think about this more widely than just may appear obvious when you read it. So consultation processes within your team, so within the group that you work within your organisation, and with other stakeholders. And this, when I say stakeholders, it could be people who supply goods to you, who are your customers, that sort of thing. So what are the consultation processes? Not just communication here, it's when you're asked for an opinion and your opinion is valued or get those from other people. So that's what we're looking for there. The next one is communication channels available for team communications as well as between levels within the organisation, within your organisation. So there might be a newsletter that goes to everybody. There might be email as a channel, it's a fairly common one. It could be meetings, could be phone calls. What are the channels? There could be internet-based things as well, or even social media sometimes. So whatever those channels are, I need you to think about those a bit. But also not amongst your own peers, but across the whole organisation. How does the CEO or the secretary of the department communicate with the people who are at the coalface, and vice versa? So your comments there would be really good. Remember, I'm asking you for suggested improvements here, so think about it. Strategies to eliminate discrimination and bias. So there may be things already in place, grievance procedures, there might be policies around equity and diversity. I want you to sort of have a bit of a look at those and just see how effective they are, if you can suggest some improvements. Strategies to collect and analyse information in order to improve work performance. So how do we get information on performance from our team, our organisation, and how do we then use that information to improve things? And then finally in this list, conflict resolution procedures. So these could be a formal grievance process, there could be employee assistance programs, commonly called EAPs, that people are allowed to use free of charge for a certain number of visits. You might have counsellors within your organisation or managers who are equipped to handle conflict, that sort of stuff. So once again, what is available and your suggestions for improvement. 2 within task 3 then is negotiation. So in this case, you're asked to describe a negotiation process that you have been involved with in a business relationship context. That makes it sound pretty highfalutin, doesn't it? But it can be something as simple as negotiating your leave, or a new contract if you're on a fixed term contract. Service agreements, asking for a pay rise is a negotiation. Asking for amended hours of work is a negotiation. So all sorts of things. They don't have to be big, but where there's been a bit of preparation you've had to negotiate. Fully describe the process with timelines and outcomes. So when did it start, how long did it take, and what was the outcome? Recommend any changes referring to the workshop materials again, because we've covered negotiation a little bit in the notes, but you could research that further. That could have improved the process or the outcome. So in most situations, preparation is the thing that's missing for negotiations. So a lot of time spent on preparing, what's happened in the past, what's all the information I need about me or my colleagues in this case, what does the manager already know, whatever it is. Just that preparation phase is usually a big one. And describe how you would implement these changes in future negotiations. So whatever things you come up with there, I just need to know how you would apply them in future. Right, we're on to task 4 then. This is called networking. So in this case, we're after 3 business networking strategies that you could use, or you may even already use them. And then for each of those, describe the advantages and possible disadvantages of the strategy. So what are some of the strategies? It could be joining a union, say. I'll be able to network with peers from other organisations. That could be really useful. That usually costs money. Sometimes have to go to meetings. You might have to have the internet to be able to access some of the things from home and that sort of stuff. So that's one. You could come to regular workshops or conferences. So even being in this course where you come to workshops, or even if you work online and you have discussions with your fellow students, that's still networking. And once again, what are some of the disadvantages, costs, and all that sort of thing? Well, there is a cost usually. You have to have access to internet. You usually have to have high literacy skills, that sort of stuff. You could do online research and reading is another strategy that you could use to link up with people in forums of like-minded on different subjects, things like that. You can actually target people or have an email list that you often negotiate with or have contact with. So remember, networking is where there's a benefit for you, but there's also a benefit for somebody else. So you share information and encourage improvement in performance or ideas. And then what else have we got here? Oh yeah, we need to think about how the organisation benefits from this too, not just you personally. So it has to have something to do with your work outcomes, so that makes fair enough. And then the last part of that is to look at the cultural, social or equity barriers that may be associated with each strategy for you and or for others, and to recommend ways to overcome these barriers. So it could be, like we're sending out newsletters or written information, people with low literacy skills would have trouble with that. It could be that there's a cost involved and people without a lot of money would have a barrier with that. It could be because I'm female. I'm not actually female, but if I was, obviously I get discriminated because of my gender, whether it's to do with pay or sometimes promotion, things like that. But also it might be excluded from high status professional clubs or associations that generally dominated by men. Could be that I'm Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander. It could be that I'm from another culture or religion altogether. All of those things, just think about how they may affect this networking strategy. Okay, so just 3 of those dot points under each would be fine. And the last one, which I hope you'll do all the time as you complete the assessment, is to put a journal together. So just looking at, what things have happened during this assessment period where you've been able to implement any of the techniques related to the unit, or better understand workplace relationship situations and issues because of your raised awareness, or observed good or bad examples of other people's relationship management or communication. Long-winded, once again, I'm sorry. What I'm after there is at least 3 occasions where either you've done something, or you've noticed other people and you can be more critical about that now. I think I need to move around a little bit because the light is now fading. Anyway, I'll continue. So it might be that you use an assertive response. It could be that someone else didn't, and the conflict that emerged from that. It could be negotiation practices. It could be to do with personality awareness, that you've now made an observation about someone's actions and you can sort of look through that and think, oh, it's probably because of their personality, where they've come from. That's what's causing them to do that. So I'm just after 3 occasions where you can use anything from the workshop materials, anything from the skills that may come from that, anything from your new knowledge, and then just a couple of brief notes about how you notice that and what it applies to. So the lights have come back up now, and I'm very pleased about that. And that's also the end of what I'm going to talk to you about for this assignment. So remember, if people haven't got a workplace, want to use a toolbox, I need to talk to you about that first. Otherwise, the assignment is for anyone else. So I hope you get something out of this unit. I look forward to seeing your responses. Thank you. Bye.